Hi, welcome to another video. In today's video we're going to take a look at the variation e4 knight c6, which is called the Nimzowitch Defense. It has caused me some problems recently, so while I was researching it, I thought it would be a good idea to create a video and hopefully help some of you out who also have trouble playing against it. I think the most principled thing to do here is definitely to play d4, and here black can choose from two continuations, which is d5, the Scandinavian variation, and e5, the Kennedy variation, which is the variation we are going to cover today. There are two main moves here, and both give white a pleasant position. I recommend the move d5, but first I wanted to quickly show you what's up with d takes e5. This leads to a more open position. For example, something like knight c3, knight f6, and here you get a position which has some resemblance to the King's Gambit or the Vienna variation you see with these pawns here and this knight here. So all of this is interesting. The problem here is that well, it's not really a problem. If you prefer open positions, definitely check this out. But I think black can try some sidelines to surprise you even further. And while this definitely is also good for white, I think it's a bit more complicated to learn, which is why I'm going to recommend to you to play d5, which should be easier to learn. It does lead to a closed position, but the moves after d5 are all pretty predictable. Before we go on, let's first take a look at some bad moves by black. Knight d4 is probably the most terrible, because after c3 the knight is just trapped, and yeah, there's nothing black can do to save it. He can get a pawn for it, but that's all. So this is totally lost. This is a totally lost position for black. If knight b4, it's a little bit better, but you can just continue developing. And if knight f6, play f4, putting pressure here on this pawn. Taking isn't the best, since now you get two extremely strong pawns here on the 5th rank, and here white has developed two pieces. The knight can jump in, you can castle short, you can castle long, and black's development is still terrible. So knight b4 not the best. Let's see what happens if black doesn't take after f4. Then you can just keep developing, and after something like bishop g4, the most played move, you chase away the knight right now. This is not so good, since after bishop b5 the check is annoying. So yeah, this is not a good position for black. So remember, after knight b4, first you develop knight to c3. You will see that happen in a lot of variations, that you first develop the knight to c3 before doing something else. I suspect one of the reasons is also its prophylaxis against knight f6, so you're defending e4 in advance, and after knight f6, f4, you open up the position as soon as possible. Also keep in mind that you can kick away this guy, and if knight to b8, well, that's not so great. I think black just wastes time here, and after something like knight f3, normal development, d6, and now I think h3 is very interesting. So knight f6, bishop d3, defending this pawn, and we're going c4 on the next move, bishop e7, c4, and now we have set up a very advantageous King's Indian defense pawn structure. So let's go back. So almost everyone, well, most people will go knight to e7 here, especially if they have experience with this system. So knight e7, knight f3 is what I recommend. You are attacking this pawn, you are developing, and here knight g6 or d6 are the main moves. So, and after knight to g6, I recommend the move h4, luring this pawn forwards. And the point is also that at some point we can target this pawn on h5 by moving the knight away. So now then the pawn on h5 is attacked. The bishop can come to e2 to create a battery to attack this pawn extra. And often white also plays g3 to protect this pawn on h4 and to deny the black pieces the f4 square. So those are some ideas. So h4, h5, after h6, white can go h5 and just win a pawn. So most people will in fact, and after d6, h5, again you have a very favorable King's Indian type of position with this pawn already far advanced. So most people will in fact play h5, and then my recommendation is bishop to g5. Why? Well, you want to create some practical problems to solve for your opponent as well. Since the most popular move here, bishop e7, is in fact immediately a mistake, since now white can go d6, attacking this bishop and ruining black's pawn structure. Bishop takes g5 and g6 are more or less evenly distributed. If the bishop takes, you take back with the h-pawn, and let's say c takes e6, then you get knight c3. Now there's a hole on d5, this pawn on d6 is weak. So let's say queen a5, then you can just take the pawn, and after the knight goes to e7, now like we said, we can put the knight on d2. Let's say castles, knight c4. Now we are attacking this pawn twice. We are attacking the queen has to go back. This is hanging, the engine even says don't bother with it, castle long. h4, yeah, I was guessing you can open things up very quickly with g3. And here you can see that all of White's pieces are active, while these are stuck, especially these two, the rook and the bishop. So that's definitely a win for White. And let's go back and let's see what happens if here Black plays c takes e6, same stuff or some similar stuff, knight c3. Let's say knight f6, and now again the engine also likes bishop takes f6, but I think knight d2 is even nicer. So let's see if we can find some more games. Yeah, let's say castles. Now we can play bishop takes f6, and after g3 you can see again this pawn is hanging, and there's not really a good way to protect it. This pawn structure means this bishop here and this rook for the moment are stuck. So knight e7, queen takes h5, and I don't think I need to explain that this position is better for White. We are a pawn up. This king isn't entirely safe. We can probably castle along on the next move, and yeah, jump in with our pieces. We have, I think, a lot of good ideas to go for, right? So yeah, not great for Black. So bishop g5. Here the best move is actually f6, which is kind of weird, and also I don't think it's a mistake that let's state classic. It's not so weird that almost no one plays it, even though it's the best move. Well, you are weakening some squares around the king, and f6 isn't aesthetically not the greatest. Here, after bishop e3, some people tried bishop b4, but it's a mistake since we can just block with c3. And again, we are jumping with the knight. We are preparing some knight jumps to maybe b3 or c4. And we are again keeping an eye on this pawn, and we can play maybe f4 or g3 followed by f4. So d6 is a big mistake since now we win the piece. So that's why bishop b6. Now we can just take it, and again go for d6 and totally block Black's pawn structure. All right. So d5, giving up the pawn, is what the engine thinks is best. But now White has a very nice advantage. Knight f4 is at least a semblance of counterplay, but in this case here you can just sidestep it. Those pieces are still stuck. I guess something like rook a4 is maybe something Black can try, but yeah, you can see that this is also no fun for Black. So same stuff. Let's go back. After e5 we go d5. Almost everyone will play knight e7, then we play knight f3. Most people will play knight to g6, h4, h5. This pawn we're going to try to prove later that it's a bit weak. Bishop g5. We are giving our opponent an opportunity to make some mistakes with bishop e7. Then we can go d6. So we saw that both bishop takes g5 and c takes c6 are not so great for black because of the continuation with knight c3, and the follow-up is almost always to move this knight to d2. Here the problem is that we are threatening knight c7. Not only that, now we also threaten to trap the queen. Oh, sorry. Let's say knight e7, rook a1, and now the queen is trapped. So, and if the queen goes back, obviously we win the rook. So, let's go back a bit. So let's say black doesn't fall for this and plays the slightly better move, knight to f6. Then we can still play this knight to d2. And I think one course gave a5, but then just developing normally with knight c3. We're going to ignore this pawn for now until it reaches a4. Then we're going to block it with a3. Let's say bishop c5, g3. We are blocking this pawn, blocking this knight from jumping to, well, we are preventing it from jumping to f4. And you can see that this pin is extremely annoying. So black can try maybe c6, undermining d5, but now a very nice move, bishop h3, with the point that after d6 we are taking this bishop, and after d takes c6, b takes c6, now we can pick up the pawn on a4. And if the queen takes, we can double his pawns on the king side, and also force the king to e7. And now lone castle. Let's say black tries something like b5. Then we can jump in. So that's why queen g4, desperately trying to trade queens. But now queen d3, bishop takes, and now we are opening things up. And after knight c4, the bishop has to block the access of the queen. Now we win back the pawn, and we are left with a terrific position. So that's why bishop a3. And bishop d4 is the best defense for black, which I think is pretty difficult to find. Now queen f3, we are attacking f6, also keeping an eye on the knight, although if black takes, we are taking back with the b pawn. And now we can jump to e4 here. Let's say rook c4, then this knight is super strong here, and these pawns are, the structure is very awkward. So rook b1, and here the engine suggests to give up the rook, since, well, or a pawn, since, let's say, black tries to maybe defend with queen e7. Knight f6 picks up this pawn and destroys the pawn cover, which is why king f8. And now white can double on the b file, So at some point black is forced to give up the exchange, or be much worse. So let's see how we got here. So this is when black played after bishop g5, knight f6. We went knight d2, and I think there was some theory with a5, but just knight c3, let it come, block it when it gets to a4, and after bishop c5, g3, c6, we are playing bishop h3, and if d6 before, maybe to block bishop h3, then we can attack from the other side. This of course isn't good, since there are not enough defenders of c6. And if bishop d7, then I think just taking and ruining the pawn structure on the king side. So yeah, there's still some work to do, but the position should be much more pleasant for the white player, right? Black also desperately wants to trade queens, which I don't think you should do. So just queen d3, and so this is a close position, still quite complex, which should be better for white. And yeah, you can research this for your own, but we're also already pretty deep, and it's not that likely you will ever get this on the board. Just showing it for completeness, and to show you the main ideas of this d5 variation, right? So d5, you chase away the knight, you get a very strong center. With knight f3 you are attacking e5. So after knight g6, h4, threatening h5, kicking the knight, winning the pawn. d6, then again you get a very nice King's Indian defense type of pawn structure, which obviously you should be able to play or learn to play if you're going to play this. So h4, h5, making this pawn maybe a target later. Bishop g5, trying to get some concessions from black. Bishop e7 is a mistake due to d6. Knight f6 is better, but now after knight d2 it's still challenging for black. So let's say bishop c5 here instead of a5. Let's say bishop c5, then just knight c3, b6, and now we can go chasing this bishop. After bishop b6 we are capturing it and playing a3, so that we so that this pawn on a2 isn't vulnerable, and we can move the rook later. Maybe also play b4. So let's say bishop g4, then bishop b5, and here you see now, because we played a3, we can recapture with the rook. And here again we are giving black this awkward pawn structure, threatening to infiltrate with our knight, which is probably why the engine suggests to play d5 to free up his position a little bit. But you can see that still it's much easier to play for white. So let's see after knight f6. Yeah, bishop c5 is the most played. Bishop e7 is also a move, but I think both bishop e2 and bishop f6, sorry, bishop takes f6 are nice moves. So here, for example, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and g3. And you can wait here to take h5, since you don't want these complications with black pushing e4 and freeing up the diagonal. So you can wait a bit, play some preparation moves first. So that almost concludes our video for today. So I recommend here d5, knight e7, knight f3. I told you that most people here go knight g6, but if something like d6, then you're setting up a King's Indian pawn structure. Knight f6, knight c3, for example, bishop g4, h3. So here you have a very nice Makoganov style position, where you have the opportunity to push your kingside pawns later. And if bishop takes f3 here, now we can play h4, and if h5, well, this it's better for white, but if you're going to play this, I do recommend that you complement your opening preparation with some kind of pawn structure course or video that explains exactly this pawn structure from both sides. So that's the Nimzowitsch with e5, the Kennedy variation. And next video we are going to talk about d5, the Scandinavian variation. Thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you in the next video.